So this is the first of a few videos that I'm going to be doing following the Erica Synths Moritz Klein EDU series, starting with something super simple and hopefully lots of fun. It is the gritty diode tortured mixer. We're starting off with this layout here, which is a passive mixing circuit. I will show you the actual schematic. So what this does, it requires no power, 2 sound sources, 2 resistors of 100k. They mix together and form a mixed version of these 2 sounds. So I'm going to create this on the breadboard and put it to and run some tests with some sound sources and to check that this is all working. This, by the way, is an op amp. It's not in use in this experiment, but it will be used in future. So I am now going to set that up. Now to do this, we're going to use the modular panel. So we have here 2 of these input jacks. We're going to use the integrated out, which is here. So we only need to manage 2 sound sources coming in. In fact, we only need to manage 1 sound source coming in because we already have an integrated sound source. So let's see if I can make this work. Okay, so I'm using sounds from the basilisk, and let's see, so I won't plug that in just yet. I need 200k resistors. So if we look at the socket instruction for the top row, is that the tip goes out from pins 7 and 9 and the lug 3 and 5. So let's see if I can somehow make this work. So let's take the sound out of 7. And we shall actually, let's run a test first just to see if this is working at all. So I'm going to send the sound from the basilisk effectively through this amp. So we'll see if I can get sound from this. Right, so got the basilisk running, speaker on. Nice, so we've got sounds coming through this socket, coming out of the pin header here, simply bridging across to the out header of the labor. So that's all good. Right, now we need another sound source. So let's see if this is working. This is the internal sound source. That is working also. So we've got these 2 sound sources, and looking at the schematic, we have these two sound sources here, and they're feeding into 100Ks, which is essentially meeting up with the same line as the out, which is this. So I believe if we get our resistors plugged in like so, this should give us a mixed output. So I can just about make out the two sounds. So I can hear the basilisk, and I can hear the oscillator. So this is a successful experiment in that we can route two sound sources via two resistors into one output, which means that we've successfully built this very basic beginner circuit. So I'm happy with that. Now let's have a look at the next experiment. So the next experiment that we can run is the simple active mixer, which is when we can start messing around with op amps. And it seems what we have here is effectively a booster circuit where the combined input of those two sound sources comes into the non-inverting input of the op amp. The output of the op amp loops back into itself into the inverting input. Now, I'm not going to go into the theory of this, but what this does is essentially create a representation of what's happening on this side across over here without affecting any of the voltage pulling and pushing here. So this should hopefully give us a better outcome. And this is the board diagram. Now, first of all, we're using a TL074, not a 2. The only difference, obviously, is there are 4 op amps in an 074 and 2 in an 072. The pinouts are also slightly different. So what's going to happen on here isn't necessarily what's going to happen on here. So I think we can figure that out because we know that these sound sources are coming into our 100Ks, and this is the second sound source coming in to the second 100K. And from the previous schematic, we saw that both of those sound sources, both of these 100Ks, were coming into the non-inverting input of the op amp. And it looks to me like this is power and that's power. So that means that that's the inverting input and this is the output, which goes through that 1K to the out. So let's build that. So we've already got our sound sources going into the 100K, which is currently summing here. So we're going to remove that. And what we're going to do is use a jumper to instead route the summing of those two signals into the non-inverting input of the op amp. We're then going to loop the output into the inverting input, and let's say we've still got our connection to out, so we'll just stick that down here for now. Finally, we'll link that output with the output of the op amp. Right, I hope I've got that right. Let's see. Sounds good. Nice. Good. Second experiment successful. So just to summarize, we've got two input sources. Looks like they're both grounded along here. Let me just try and demonstrate this in a bit more clearer way. So, right, so we know that this line and this line and this line is just ground. This is the power to the positive rail. This is the power to the negative rail. Then we've got the outputs of the two signals going through this 100k. That's the first signal. Second signal, beg your pardon, that is not correct. First signal comes down here through the 100k. The second signal comes along here, down here, here, and these both go into the plus. That is the minus. That is the out. So this is our feedback loop, and this is the out that goes to the main out, and this is the ground. So hopefully you're following. We've got this sound source here, and we've got this internal sound source here being summed into this via these 200k resistors. That's coming into the op amp. Then we're boosting the signal through this loop back, and then we're finally sending the output of the op amp of the summed two signals to this line, and then here, which is to the out. So that's good. Happy with that. So the next experiment, or exercise if you like, is the inverting mixer. So the only real change, actually, see, I've forgotten to put that 1k resistor between the output and the out. That should go here. I'm going to use this to find out what this is. Right, so this is a 1k. This is the 1k, so this can go here, it can go there. Just double check it's working. Nice. Okay. So the inverting circuit. How do we achieve that? Simple. Instead of creating the average of our inputs, we need to add them together so that the oscillation plus silence equals the unaltered oscillation. To get there, we have to take a slightly confusing detour, turning our buffer into an inverting buffer. To do that, we set up our op amp like this. So we've got 200k resistors coming into the inverting input. Non-inverting goes to ground, and then we loop back into from the out of the op amp into the inverting input with 100k, and then lastly we've got our 1k out. So if we look here, that's our 1k, that's our out, so we'll leave that where it is. This has to come out. Let's see. Here's our feed from the audio, which is going in to the inverting side. The non-inverting is going into ground, and then we need 100k. That is going to do our loop back like that. Now that goes from the out into the inverting. Right, so let's check the breadboard. So we have, oh, now we've got 3 ins. Let's trace this through, shall we? So we've got ground, ground, ground. Then we've got first signal coming through here, through our 100k. Right, so that is the inverting. And that's the out. So that makes sense. Then we've got our second line of audio coming through this 100k, going through here as well. Then we've got our third line of audio coming along here. So all 3 lines of audio are going into the inverting input. So if we check here, we've got 2 lines of audio, but that's fine, going into the inverting input. So we've done it differently here, obviously, but I think it should work. Then we've got our out via the 1k, and then this is the grounded socket. This is power, this is power, and then we have our 100k loop back, which is this loop back here. Right, and then, beg your pardon, then we've also got the non-inverting input to ground, which is this. So let's see if this works. all seems to be working okay. Happy with that. So that's the third experiment stroke exercise successful. The next exercise is the double negative mixer. So we're getting rid of the inversion by inverting the inverted signal. So at this point here we'll have an inverted signal, and then by running it through this system here we're reversing it to the original. Now if this was audio, we wouldn't tell the difference, but if this was a control signal we would. So what we have here is the original inverted, and we have the true uninverted out. So let's see if we can figure that out. So so we have quite a lot going on here. It looks simple enough. What I think I'm going to do is just clean it up a bit. So I know that we don't need to worry about that because that's power, and this is also power. This is ground. This is ground. And this is ground. Right, I think I'm going to pause here, take some time to clean this up, and then when I come back we can start to think about how to convert on screen this this layout to the labor into something that works on here. So I'll see you in a sec. I've had a bit of a play around with the breadboard layout. So what we've got in the green, on the green traces, we've got the three incoming audio signals, all of which are going through 100k resistors, all of which are converging in the inverting inputs. The non-inverting input is going to ground, just like before, and then the output has a 100k loop back, and then is also going through this 1k here to the out. So that's exactly as it is in this config here. So the other change that we need to build is this second line, which is coming along here and going up here through 100k and again into the inverting inputs. So we can see here inverting input 100k resistor looping back by another 100k. So let's build that. So we've already got resistors in place for the audio, and we've got a resistor in place for the loop back. And we've got an out, which is going to the 1k. So we want to send let's take the op amp on the top here. So the 100k goes into the inverting. We can connect the signal before it goes to the 100k. I think we can do this. So we've got our connection that goes up to this point and then goes into here. Now we want to ground the non-inverting input. Let me just double check the schematic. Yep, so both non-inverting inputs are being grounded. We need another 1k resistor. Pretty sure this is a 1k. Yep. And we need another 100k as a loop back, another loop back. So it's kind of a mirror of this first op amp. So the output is being looped into the non-inverting. Sorry, the output is being looped back into the inverting input of the op amp. And then I think what we can do is just alternate the outs, because we've only got one out and this mixer diagram has two. So let's see if it works. Let's just see if it works. Okay. So that's all good. So although they both sound the same, the waveforms are different, they're inverted. The first one was inverted, the second one was true. And that is going to be more apparent. It would be more apparent if I had an oscillator and I could show you the different waveforms, ideally in parallel. I don't have an oscillator. I don't have an oscilloscope, I should say. So just take my word for it. Right, I think that's a good place to stop, and I'll see you soon for the next one. Okay, I'm back and I now have 200k pots lined up ready to be used. So if we look at the breadboard, it looks like we've got these three inputs here. That's the non-inverting output, that's the inverting output. And so if we just edit this for a sec, we can pretty much just disregard this one because we only have two ins. Now the first input, it looks like it goes into the rightmost pin of the pot, and then the center pin goes into the 100k, which then goes into the op amp. So if we look at the labor, here we have one of the audio sources that goes straight into the 100k, so we'll take that out of the 100k and we're going to put that into the farthest right pin, which is 11 and 13. 11. And then the center pin, which is essentially the wiper, will come back into the original spot for the audio previously, and we'll do the same for this. I'm not sure if it will reach. Oh yeah. So the internal oscillator goes into the right handmost pin, then the wiper comes out of that and goes back into the 100k. If we just look at the schematic for a sec. So here is a 100k resistor. The ones on the labor are pre-grounded, but I suppose if it doesn't work, we'll actively ground them. That's the signal coming in. Then it goes through the 100k, all nice and joined up into the inverting input. Non-inverting goes to ground. So all of this is the same as it was. So it should just work. So let's see if it works. Kind of works. I wonder if we need to ground these. Yes. Success. Nice. All right, that's a success. So if we look at what we have left to build, so we've done adjustable levels. Now we've just got the diode distortion, and then that's it. So I'm going to do that another time, but yeah, I think we can handle that. And then if we just look at the full schematic, I think we can spend a bit of time just sort of decomposing that and also the simplified schematic. So yeah, I think that's it for one evening. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.